What? How you doing? When plans go in the bin for no reason other than can't be bothered. I had a plan for today that I felt would have been really quite useful. Okay, it would have kind of scratched a technical itch for me and solved a really quite annoying problem caused by laziness, greed, I don't know. So, I've been chatting to a friend over iMessage recently. We don't use any of the other normal social apps, but they happen to have iOS devices. And because I got an iOS device around Christmas time, New Year's time, because my two boys got iPads and I needed an Apple device to operate the parental controls on their devices, because Apple won't let you just reply to an email when a request is made. It's all the parental control stuff is baked into the operating system, unlike every other system. Yeah, your kid wants to buy something on the PlayStation Network, yes or no, comes through in an email. I don't remember if the PlayStation Network actually does that, but I know like for like Xbox and a bunch of other stuff, you will just get an email. Not with Apple. With Apple, you have to have an iDevice. I get the iDevices. Okay. So I start using iMessage and all that kind of stuff to get involved in these chats, because it was an alright way to get into chats. It was working, it was fine. But if you haven't noticed, I wear gloves, or I have been wearing gloves quite a lot. These things make using one of these a nightmare. Trying to type on a phone is a ball ache. Trying to operate a phone is a ball ache. Trying to operate a tablet is a ball ache. But the gloves have to stay for now. I'm sure I remember once upon a time, and my mate DeWald, who is a hardcore Apple user, I'm pretty sure he remembers it this way too, because he said, like, do you remember a time when Apple said they were going to make iMessage kind of like the multi-platform messaging thing to rule all? And then they never did it. Like, they locked it down to Apple's platform and that. Well, because Apple never released the iMessage protocol like they said they would, I don't own a Mac, or I do, but not a Mac that runs any of the new operating systems where all of this kind of stuff was tied in. I have the iPhone, I have an iPad, and the only way I can realistically use iMessage is through keyboard, paired up to my iPad, which makes things awkward. So I thought, you know what, why don't I see if I can set up a Hackintosh? There's no way that I can use iMessage on any of my other machines. Why don't I use... So I looked for open source kind of hooks into iMessage. I couldn't find any, although admittedly I didn't look that hard. I thought, you know what, I will scratch the technical itch and I will set up a Hackintosh. But not only will I set up a Hackintosh, I will set up a virtual machine server on one of my small machines, and potentially for the giggles run, I don't know, Windows, Linux and Mac OS on the same box, so I can just kind of go between the three, literally have all three running and just go between the three. And that way I can use iMessage on the Mac section, I can still do stuff on the Windows section, stuff on the Linux section, nothing particularly hardcore, but you know, like mail and messaging and all that kind of stuff. Because even when I'm using other stuff, Signal Messenger, if I use WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Telegram, I don't use Telegram, but if I were to use Telegram, I would use the desktop apps. I do not like doing messaging-y stuff on my phone. I tend to be quite short and abrupt with messages over the phone, and that can cause problems. So this seemed like a nifty little solution, and the idea was I would take a Dell Optiplex 3040. I've got a couple of them, and I would run Proxmox, which is a virtualization tool, a hypervisor, to oversimplify that one would be, I can install Proxmox, and then Proxmox will give me the option to containerize an operating system. Okay, so instead of just installing an operating system and it being only that operating system on the thing, I can say, right, here is a section of the hardware, here's a section of the processor, here's a section of the RAM, here's a section of the hard drive, and I want you to install and run this operating system. Then I want you to install this operating system on this section, and I want you to install and run this other operating system on this section. Nothing particularly hardcore, but in looking at the steps that I would need to do to get the Mac bit done, it was not difficult. There were a few things that I'd have had to have done, and I was like, you know what, this can go straight in the bin, because I would be spending more time just to use iMessage than if I was just to mash my face into an iPad and type a message with my skull. So what would have needed to have been done, I hope I've just explained actually, virtualization and hypervisors, or just boxes, operating systems, they can all run on the same hardware. It's just split up into, you're rationing it off to all these things, rather than running each one at its own time kind of thing. It's sectioned off, and you can shell it the same mouse and keyboard between the three, and that's the same graphics card, the same RAM, and all that, and it's just, either way. Right. I would have had to have gone and fired up one of my old Macs, because I would have needed, I think it's a 64 character string that I would have needed to have input into Proxmox to get Mac OS to, it's like a serial key to recognize that it's running on legit Apple hardware. There's like a serial for each machine, and that is what is allowing the system to run. Like on Windows, you have like a serial key. Well, the Mac OS kind of has that. The Mac has that built in somewhere. Maybe on the EFI. I don't know. I'm just pulling things out of my ass at this point. But there's a 64 character string that I need, and I would have had to have run a Mac to actually get it. And frankly, I couldn't be asked. I've got an old like dual core iMac upstairs that I would occasionally use to pull stuff off of DVDs, Mac format DVDs. I thought that this whole like hypervisor thing would be like, that'd be a great way to actually still use that Mac to get that key, and then move all of my Mac style stuff onto modern-ish hardware. There's other benefits to hypervisors, by the way, but I'll get to that in a second. So as soon as I thought, I'll run that machine, I'll get the string, I looked at it and was like, whilst that's only like a couple of scripts to get that string, I frankly can't be bothered with it. I just can't be bothered with it. I mean, I'm going to have to go upstairs, I'm going to have to clean up some space, I'm going to have to hook up a mouse and keyboard, I'm going to have to type in all this stuff, which is like literally a couple lines. You know, I'm going to have to copy all this data over, I'm then going to have to come back downstairs, I have to pack all that stuff up, go back downstairs, grab all this other stuff, start putting it all together, and for iMessage, no. Because the performance on the machine that I was going to run it on, the 3040, wouldn't have really been good enough to justify it, to warrant it. If I was going to put like all three operating systems on my main machine, Belial, then yeah, sure, it probably wouldn't have been that'd have been fucking great. I'd have had a pretty fast Mac, I'd have had a pretty fast Windows machine, I'd have had a pretty fast Linux machine, but it just, if I actually had something else to do on the Mac shy of iMessage, that might have been worth it, but no. It was a neat little idea that I just put straight in the bin. Bonus to hypervisors, stuff like Proxmox, virtualization and that as well, is that once you set up a machine, you can clone that machine, that image that you run in Proxmox, and store it somewhere. So then next time, you could just store an image of it on a hard drive somewhere, on a server somewhere, and then like if you need to restore things back to factory settings, how you first set it up, you can just literally go, yeah, Proxmox, here's the thing, copy it over, set up, tweak a few little bits if you need to, bam, the full machine is there, up and running in a snapshot. Or you take a snapshot of where it was, and it's there on the new hardware. Because it's virtualized. You're just like, oh yes, this hardware running on, and as long as you've got the horsepower to run it, then you're good, right? Because you're just separating hardware that you already have into chunks. To not a particularly great way of explaining it. So I put that one in the bin. Maybe one day, but just not right now. That was not a project for the day. So instead, I ended up busting out an old GLInet router. I say an old GLInet router, it's only like a year or so old. A little like travel router, USB-C powered travel router, and it's a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi router. Hooked it up to my Zephyrus, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to set up a smaller, more portable version of my wireless VR setup. Normally I'd use a bigger Asus Wi-Fi 6 router stuck on the back of my sofa, but I packed all that up a few months ago, and I'd pair that up with an Oculus Quest. So I'd have one router for my internet, and everyone in the house would be connected to that for Netflix, Amazon, general gaming and all that kind of stuff. And then I would have a second router just to connect my headset to the Wi-Fi router, which would then connect it to my PC, so that I could then stream full bandwidth, the full bandwidth of the Wi-Fi connection from the router to the headset to be able to play VR games and other content wirelessly with no lag, no stutter or anything like that, assuming that the machine can run it with no stutter and delay, because I have literally the full pipe. Because when you start to share the router with other people in the house and they're doing their Netflixy stuff, bandwidth has to go elsewhere. And there is kind of a flaw. There's a place where you don't really want to go any lower with VR streaming over Wi-Fi before things start to go kind of janky, like you'll start to get kind of input lag and stuttering and that kind of stuff. So you want to realistically say, you guys are watching your Netflix and that, and you've like sucked the pipe down this low. Well, I need that much to be able to get my VR to work, right? So I'll just have my own router. Set up the little GLInet router, and it works pretty good. It's only 5 gigahertz rather than the normal Wi-Fi 6 I've got. It's a bit messy because I don't have Ethernet in that on the side of my laptop, but yeah, it worked. It was nice. I'd set virtual desktop, yeah, the streaming server on the Zephyrus G14 to like potato mode, and there is actually a mode called Potato. It's the lowest resolution version because the Zephyrus does choke a bit in VR. And I also set up the... I've gone and forgot what mode it is, but basically it renders everything at 36 frames a second and then uses like frame interpolation, jiggery pokery to double up the frame rate to set it to 72 to where kind of it should be. It basically generates the magical frame in between to make it look smoother so you don't end up suffering from motion sickness. I set it like that just so that I could kind of get away with more on the Zeph, because again, it's kind of gutless. I can get away with some stuff at 70 odd, but some PC VR rooms really chug the Zeph. And if I can get away with playing and streaming at the same time, even if it's at a jank frame rate, I'll take that. I will take that hit. If it means I can get rid of the cable and go with the cable dance, I'll get rid of the cable dance. That'll be fantastic. Rather than having to have a full-blown router plugged into the wall and have all that plugged into Belial. By the way, Belial, an RTX 3080 will still choke in some VR titles. It's just VR is in some cases so poorly optimized, it's brutal. Or it's just because people go, you know what, I want all the pretties turned up to max in my VR chat room, and I want all my models, my character avatars to have like shite tons of detail in them. Just graphics cards go and then just die. There was some jiggery bits, like some little kind of wibbly, not quite right bits, but again, I will take playable, serviceable over not at all. And if it means I can stream it, fantastic. I don't know if I can, but I mean, like, on my laptop, trying to stream Demio on native res on my headset was just no. PC, no problem. Like playing the desktop mode, no problem. But just I am running a 60-watt GPU in my laptop. It chugs. It does chug in the VR, but then my RTX 3080 in my PC can chug in VR. So, but like I say, I will take what I can get on the little laptop if it does mean that I can kind of cut it about and do the wireless, the PC, the VR. I had a little go in VR with Noodle today. We went into Rec Room. I mean, me and the boys were supposed to get into Rec Room today, but my eldest, he must have just gone, you know what, mate, I'm just going to play in VR chat and play the Among Us game in VR chat. So me and Noodle rocked around, and I mean, I was using the whole, you know, what was it, 36 frames thing and all that in Rec Room, and it was fine. We were like driving around go-karts and all that kind of stuff. It was neat, it was fun, and you know, again, totally passable. It was great. So, when plans go in the bin. That said, I am now going to head the off. Exhausted. Sleeping, not at all. Is just not a groove. I've powered through this last week. I was terrified I weren't going to make it through this last week. Because, I mean, I'm so old. Granddad naps are becoming a thing. So, let's see if I can get an early night for a change. I kind of want to get some Slime VR now for my Quest. Didn't you get full body tracking for your Vive? Yeah. You know what? I've also got some Tundras on the way. I ordered them ages ago before I got the Vive trackers, but they got, it seems they got caught in customs. Got a notification the other day. I've just paid the bill. I'll have a set of Tundra trackers full body soon, but I'd like some slimes to put in my backpack to go with the Quest. Then that'd be neat. How much more VR stuff do you need? All of it. Again, it's another time. Hope you are. I'll see you all with a bit of luck in the next one.